Back to Basics supplements. Thanks for tuning in to the next edition of the Back to Basics. We've done Back to Basics detox. We've done Back to Basics diet. All about back to the basics. What are the fundamentals from a supplemental standpoint is the next installation. Back to the basics supplements. What are the basic supplements that you, your family, need to have on board with you at all times? I'll give you not a ton of science, just some basic background. Everything from gestation, while you're carrying your child, to your young children, to adolescents, 20-something, 30-somethings, up into middle age, all the way up to seniors. Now you'll find that there's common themes. There's basic nutrients that always have to be with us that we really need from an immune standpoint, gastrointestinal standpoint, etc. There's just basic nutrients that we need to have literally at almost no matter what age. But you'll see as we go through this, there'll be focal points where it's so much more important. A B12 level, a vitamin D level, omegas. You'll find that there's richer times of support for your body. So let's start with the basics. The basics are pregnancy. Your daughter, your granddaughter, maybe you are carrying a child. What are some of the important things that you need to be aware of? Well, you must have a 25 OHD level done. You've got to have a vitamin D level. Why? Because we find that in the offspring of moms that have adequate vitamin D levels, there's less type 1 diabetes incidence, there's less incidence of autoimmune disorders and diseases. Very, very critical nutrient. Everybody knows about folate and folic acid. Had we implemented adequate folate supplementation, if you will, years ago, 20 years ago, we'd have nowhere near as many young children with neural tubes defects, spina bifida, and so on. So we know that one nutrient can play huge roles in how our body functions. Vitamin D during pregnancy, critical. Omega-3s for mom during pregnancy, critical. Why? Brain functioning is so much better in young children because of the DHA levels to a mom that consumes quality cold water sources of fish and quality supplementation, mainly because of the DHA component. Another nutrient for a gestating mom, probiotic essentials. So you'll see here, and we'll show you in a little bit, the supplementation aspect, the basic, and then the additional forms of supplementation. Probiotic essentials, why? Literature shows that in moms that are carrying a child, that if they have good bacteria in the womb and they have a high disposition, if they're genetically susceptible because of parental influences, to things like eczemas, dermatitises, what we would term atopy. Eczemas, skin condition, asthma, sinus problems. That's termed atopy or atopic disorders. It's much lower in a population that have good bacteria in their intestinal tract. So any disruption, it can affect you. So from a pregnancy standpoint, the omegas, D3, good bacteria, probiotics, folate, antioxidants, buffered vitamin C. So the basics kind of apply even in that area. Why? Quality antioxidants in a gestational mom, they have lower incidence of preeclampsia. There's been a lot of literature on both sides of this. Toxemias of pregnancy, where a mom's body is just overwhelmed. They don't clear a lot of the toxic residue. Their blood pressure goes up. They can be dangerous periods for a pregnant mom. Higher levels of antioxidants seem to negate that. Magnesium, selenomethionine, a mineral, adequate levels of buffered C ascorbates, and so on. Good quality antioxidants play a huge role. Let's move into the next age. Children. What about your children? Child's born 4, 5, 6 years old. What are the same applications? Remember, you'll see the same themes. This is a back to basics about supplements. D3 is important in your young child. Why? We know some fundamental principles about D3 that I probably won't repeat again, but here's the key. D3 can do lots of things to modulate your immune system. One of the key things is it stimulates what's called antimicrobial peptides. Discussed that in How to Build Your Immune System, previous video. Stimulates antimicrobial peptides. We also know that it encourages conversion of T cells, which are premature NK killer cells. So you could have adequate precursors to your immune system, your immune fighting cells. If you don't have adequate D, you have these precursor or these T cells floating around, not being converted to killer cells effectively, Vitamin D allows you to do that. What we also know about vitamin D, that there's now literature showing that on the DNA, there's almost disease zones, if you will, that are associated with our DNA. Adequate levels of vitamin D are critical because we have now documented that there's high levels of vitamin D receptors on these disease zones, if you will, on our DNA. If we don't have adequate levels of D to begin to, I don't want to say use the word repair, but help the DNA to function correctly, we have a greater level of expression in disease states. So in a young child, D3 levels, the omegas, DHA, brain function, cognition, focus, concentration, probiotic essentials, and vitamin C, buffered C again. Why probiotics? Children, your immune system. Probiotics have a huge impact on your immune system. Different strains of bacteria have greater impact on different types of bodily function, whether it's digestion, elimination, immunity, inflammatory conditions, cholesterol levels. But that's pretty much why we've come up with a pretty generic, across-the-board, fundamentally sound multi-spectrum that we have manufactured to our own specs, probiotic essentials. Well, why? 11 strains, 12 billion units at a minimum, been assayed independently at between 18 and 19 billion units, critical in young children. So remember, common themes, it's going to go all the way through the ages. Back to basics, supplements. The teens, what happens with teens? Well, hormones begin to change. Onset of periods and menses for young girls. Young boys, hormone levels begin to rise, testosterone, acne, skin. What happens here? We need adequate levels of the Bs. Now this is where we start to get into more defined roles. Adequate levels of the Bs, maybe some coenzyme Bs for your teens, maybe some double zinc for your teens. Why? Skin, testosterone, helping to not allow you to convert to dihydrotestosterone, doesn't thicken the sebum as much, diminished incidence for skin and acne conditions. Teens, what else is really important? Well, magnesium essentials, premenstrual syndrome, a lot of young girls suffering with PMS. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Magnesium can be a very, very critical and key mineral. We eat more fast foods. You find that a lot of times once your kids move to 14, 15, 16 years of age, they're out of the home more. They're eating more fast foods. They're eating less at home. You have less control. A lot of the deep fried, the rancid fats, foodstuffs that need to be combated, that will raise their risk for skin, acne, hormonal issues. Literature shows that the more trans fats or deep fried fats that a woman consumes, the more dysfunction she has with her cycles, her periods, and her hormones. That's a fact. Teens, children, pregnancy, you see many of the same themes. Again, probiotics and omegas fall into that as well. What about adulthood? Adulthood, I feel, is pretty interesting here for men and women and how we separate them. Number one, the Bs once again come up for women. Oh well. Coenzyme Bs come up for women for premenstrual syndromes. Why? Because a huge portion of how the body processes your estrogens, estrogen metabolites, and excretion of them takes place in the liver, highly dependent upon the Bs. Now, there's a lot of other nutrients that help that process and aid that process as well, but the coenzyme Bs are certainly very critical for cycling and menstruating women. Magnesium essentials comes up again. Magnesium deficits for premenstrual syndrome. I didn't bring anything out for you along the lines of Agnus castus, Vitex, a specific herb, another component. Men, stress, adrenal stress, big issues with work, stress demands of business, work hours, many guys working 2 jobs or have gone back to school, a lot of demands, a lot of adrenal stress. For a lot of men, a lot of middle-aged men, worries about your finances, etc. High consumption of the Bs. So whether it's for a woman with menstrual cycle issues or it's a guy in the workplace, the demands for the Bs, coenzyme forms in particular, not just a B complex. I'm not going to go into the details, but the coenzymes, they're more body ready in a nutshell. Very, very important to have them on board as well. You're 40 to 50 something, need to start thinking about something like a Saw Palmetto Plus, which I forgot to get as well. But a Saw Palmetto Plus plays a very, very important role in protecting the prostate gland in men. Double zinc and Saw Palmetto Plus. Got to be proactive. You have to be proactive. You don't want to wait until there's an issue. You don't want to wait until there's a problem with prostate enlargement, BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, etc. So, through the ages, back to basic supplementation, you'll see many of the same consistencies, and they center around the probiotic essentials, D3, daily essentials, quality omega-3 800s, buffered C ascorbates, many of the consistencies. There's greater demands at different age brackets and different stages of life, and that's where we want to tailor it to. Let's move on now to the 60-something, 70-something, 80-something category. What should we be aware of? Well, first of all, as we begin to age, our hormones typically decline. Obviously, andropause in men, menopause in women, loss of sense of well-being, vaginal drying with women, hot flashes, night sweats, men with more fatigue because their hormones are dropping. What precipitates that, I believe, are a couple issues. Chemicals in the environment, estrogen mimics, hormone mimics in the environment, and also stress. High levels of stress, physical inactivity causes our hormones. That's not the whole issue, but those are some of the key underpinnings as to why our hormones begin to drop. So what happens there? Well, we prematurely age. And I'm going to do a video on reversing aging. And I don't know that I really honestly like that terminology, because I don't know that you really ever reverse aging. There's no such thing, as indicated by my gray hair. But the bottom line is, you can certainly put a tremendous slowing process. It's in the literature. There are individuals that when you look at their chromosomes, they might be 60 years of age from a calendar standpoint, but their age in years of trauma to the body are what we would call biological aging versus chronological aging. They're aging like a 70-something and they're 60. There are others that are 60-something and their biological aging on their DNA is that of a 50-year-old. It's the telomeres. You can measure telomeres. They're little end caps on the end of your DNA. They're called telomeres. What helps to maintain your telomeres? There's a couple herbs that do that, but omegas and D3, stress, chemicals. So as we get into the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there's some things that we have to keep in mind. How hormones are dropping, how stress and cortisol wreaks havoc in our bodies and speeds up the aging process. The other area is low B12 status. Many times we have impaired digestion. Many folks are on acid-blocking types of medications. You do not absorb and manufacture, because you do make some B12 right in your stomach, by the way, with intrinsic factor and good bacteria. But you don't extract it from your foods well if you lack hydrochloric acid. The end result of that is, again, I hate to just keep using the phrase, the literature shows, but what the literature shows, that if you take and you stratify B12 levels in 60 and 70 somethings, that if you put it into four categories, four quartiles, those in the lowest quartile of B12, not necessarily out of the range, lowest end of the range versus highest end of the normal range, those in the lowest end of the range have a 25% increased level of shrinkage of their brain based on MRI imaging. Get your B12 levels up. If you've got a parent, have them have a B12 level, a 25 OHD level. B12 is important, vitamin D. But see, there's still some common themes. The D, the omegas, helping to slow down senescence or aging. Blood sugars, I just want to talk about that real quick. I don't have any of the nutrients and supplementation here, but if someone is battling, moving towards type 2 diabetes, see, when your blood sugars are higher, it causes what we call glycation end products. Those glycation end products speed up the aging process. It causes your arteries to age faster, causes our skin to age faster. Managing your blood sugars. And I don't want to get into nutrients, back to the basics, but no, there's a whole nother set of issues there as well. Vitamin D in the elderly is very critical, 70s and 80s. And what happens is if you have low vitamin D status in that age bracket, there's more frailty, more immune compromise, higher rates of lower respiratory infections, and there is less strength in the musculature. There's less frailty. I'm not even talking about the bone issues in vitamin D, but there's less frailty in the aged when their vitamin D levels are more normalized. Vitamin D, probiotic essentials, buffered C ascorbates, omega-3 800s, daily essentials. Those are common themes that run from pregnancy to the 80s and 90s. They're common nutrients that you should really have on board. Remember, there are a lot of other good things that you can supplement and that you could take, and we have a host of those, and I take them myself. This was a back to basics. What should you have? What should you be taking? And then just a few of the other support agents along the way to help you. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for watching this video. Lord willing, there are more to come. I hope you've enjoyed Back to Basics supplementation. See you again.